preparing for the IELTS exam, but you're a little bit nervous and worried about the IELTS speaking section. It's only normal for you to feel a little bit scared because you are being examined at the end of the day, but there are ways for you to score high and to prepare yourself for the IELTS speaking section. In this video lesson, we'll be focusing on IELTS speaking part 1. Together, we'll go through the marking criteria, how you can prepare yourself for the IELTS part 1, and also some do's and don'ts to help you score high in IELTS speaking part 1. Now, before we go through exactly how to prepare yourself to score high for IELTS speaking part 1, remember to support my channel by hitting that like button. Also, don't forget to subscribe to my YouTube channel and to turn on notifications so that you get the next lesson that I post here. And also, as always, I've left a question for you to answer in the comments below this video. Read the question, answer your question, and join our discussion in the comments below this video. Now, if you're preparing for IELTS, you will have to make a decision whether you'll be taking general or the academic test. These tips we'll be going through in this video lesson will help you prepare for both the general and academic exam, as these questions, these tips from the IELTS Speaking Part 1 section are used in both the academic and the general test. Now, if you're preparing for IELTS, you know that it's probably really important to get that score that you want because maybe you're moving abroad, you want to study abroad, you need it for a job. For whatever reason you would like to score high in the IELTS Speaking Part 1. I understand that you may feel nervous and anxious because you really need that score. You've invested a lot of time and money to first of all take that test and you want the results. But try to relax a little bit. Try to think of the IELTS Speaking Part 1 as a conversation. Try to think of it as you're meeting somebody new, so maybe it's a friend, it's a teacher, it's a professor, it's somebody on the street, but you're not meeting a friend, you're being examined at the end of the day, but in the IELTS Speaking Part 1 section, you are basically having a general conversation with somebody new. Of course, you don't want to be using slang and really informal English, but try to think of that whole section of the IELTS exam as a general conversation because that's what it is at the end of the day and you are being marked on that. When you walk into the exam, what happens generally is that the examiner will introduce themselves to you and you'll be required to introduce yourself to the examiner, just like you would when you're having a conversation with somebody new in English. But you have to speak to this examiner for 4 to 5 minutes about general conversation, general topics in English. In these 4 to 5 minutes, you could be asked anything about your hobbies, about traveling, about work, about where you live, about your family, about your interests, basically any general conversational starters in English. So for the IELTS Speaking Part 1, you're going to have to talk about yourself, express yourself fluently in this section for 4 to 5 minutes. Now you may think that this is easy. Okay, in IELTS Speaking Part 1, you're just talking about yourself, but did you know that examiner is looking for a few things to evaluate how well you are able to express yourself in English? In this section, you'll be marked on the following criteria. The examiner will pay attention and analyze your pronunciation. So how well you pronounce words. Do you mispronounce a lot of words? Is the examiner able to understand you? You'll be marked on your fluency. Are you able to express yourself? Do you stop? Do you say Do you have to think a lot? How fast and how well are you able to speak and answer those questions the examiner is asking you? You will be marked on your vocabulary. Are you able to use a wide range of vocabulary, or are you constantly using the same words over and over again? You will also be marked on your grammar skills. How well are you able to express yourself with various grammatical structures, and how accurately are you able to express yourself using those grammatical structures? So basically, are you always using the present simple tense, which probably isn't a good thing to be doing, but instead are you using a wide range of grammatical structures to accurately express yourself when speaking in English? Okay, so I probably scared you a little bit as the marking criteria is pretty strict and you do have to speak fluently, remember words, grammar, and express yourself on questions, any questions they could ask. But there are ways for you to practice and prepare yourself for the IELTS Speaking Part 1 at home. So you already know that you'll be asked general questions about where you're from, where do you live, what do you do for fun, your interests, traveling, so you can prepare yourself to answer these questions and practice. Think of common questions you may be asked in the IELTS Speaking Part 1 and write them down in a diary or a notebook. Write down 100 questions, write down 150 questions, write down all the questions you think you could be asked in the IELTS Speaking Part 1. Now, you've written down the questions. What you should be doing next is answering those questions. Answer those questions in about 2 to 3 sentences so that you are preparing yourself. The next step is to get feedback from a teacher specialised in IELTS so that you can see that you are using a wide range of vocabulary and grammar when answering those questions. Now, the first 3 steps involved a lot of writing, but the IELTS Speaking Part 1 is a spoken test, so if you've only done those 3 steps and you aren't following the next 3 steps, it's really not going to help you in the long term. Now, my personal recommendation is anyone preparing for IELTS, it is an expensive exam, it does take a lot of time to master, and it is also quite difficult for some native English speakers. So you should be preparing for about 30 to 60 days before you actually plan to sit that exam. And what you should be doing to really master and score high in the IELTS Speaking Part 1 is review. Review your answers every single day, 30 to 60 days before you actually plan to take that test. A great way to prepare yourself to better answer these speaking questions is to actually be answering them in spoken form. So you have your corrections written down on a piece of paper. Now it's time to record your voice, record yourself on your mobile phone, answering and just simply reading those questions out loud. Do this every single day so that you become familiar with actually answering these questions and saying them out loud. Now, you could also be asking yourself these questions and talking to yourself in front of a mirror. Stand in front of the mirror, ask yourself those lists of questions that you've answered, talk to yourself. Pay attention to your pronunciation, to your intonation, use of vocabulary and grammar, and simply, are you stopping, are you stuttering, or do you sound fluent when you are answering those questions? Another great thing you could do is to get an English speaker, a native English speaker, simply reading out, recording their voice, reading your answers. And then what you could do every single day for the 30 to 60 days leading up to the IELTS exam is simply listen to that recording every single day. This way you become more familiar with the correct pronunciation, the correct intonation you should be using when answering those questions the examiner may ask you throughout the speaking section. Finally, it's great to be speaking. Get somebody asking you those questions you've written down and answer them freely. Those 30 to 60 days before your exam, if you've listened to those answers every single day, if you've been reading, just simply surrounding yourself with those answers, you'll see that you'll be able to answer them really fast. But you don't know how fast, how accurate, how great your vocabulary or how bad your vocabulary will be if you're not practicing and doing some role play situations. Find somebody to ask you those questions and answer them. You could ask somebody who can speak a little bit of English so that you just get used to answering those questions and simply sitting in front of somebody and speaking and answering them. Incorporating this maybe once or twice a week in your study routine 30 to 60 days before your exam will improve your confidence. A lot of people get shy when taking the IELTS speaking test because, somebody's there, they're examining you. So this can help you build your confidence simply answering these questions in front of somebody. Finally, a great way to see that you really are using a wide range of grammar, a wide range of vocabulary, and your pronunciation, intonation sounds a-okay, is to be speaking to English speakers. Find a native English speaker, find an English teacher, find somebody to ask those questions, get feedback a few weeks before the exam so that you are fully prepared to better answer those questions in the IELTS speaking section. Now, these steps are crucial. They will help you score high in the IELTS speaking section, but there are some do's and don'ts that you should follow when answering questions in the IELTS speaking section, and we'll be going through them right now. Now, the first do that I do want to highlight is that you should answer and you should sound natural, speak freely, and you should not sound like a robot. Now, in my suggestions for you to better prepare yourself for the IELTS speaking section, I did tell you to listen to write down those answers and to just surround yourself more with how you could possibly answer those questions. But you should not be memorizing those answers. By you listening to your answers repetitively for 30 to 60 days before their exam, you will see that your ability to think of the answers, to express yourself faster, will improve. But if you go into the exam and you simply just repeat everything you've memorized and you sound like a robot, you will not score high, and most likely you'll also get scared because you're just worried, I didn't say it exactly how I wrote it down. Try to speak freely, and when you are going through those steps, try to think that, okay, this is a way for me to get used to speaking more comfortable and to better remember those words. As IELTS is probably a really important exam for you to pass and to score high on, I do suggest that you prepare. Use these tips that I mentioned before, use them regularly, do your research, look up new questions, be answering new questions on a daily basis, because the more you prepare, the better you will score, and also the more confident you'll feel answering these questions the examiner will ask you. Now, you also don't want to be too nervous or too anxious entering that room. Get enough sleep the night before, relax, do the preparation 30 to 60 days before so that you do feel confident, that you smile when you get in there, that you make eye contact, that you're confident speaking to that person. Remember, the IELTS speaking part 1 is just like you're meeting somebody new. When you meet somebody new, you want to make eye contact with them. You want to sound excited to meet them. You want to get to know them a little bit. Here, the examiner is getting to know you. Yes, they are marking you, but there is no reason for you to feel nervous or anxious in the IELTS speaking part 1, because basically these are questions generally about you. Also, it's important to have a personality. You are unique. You're meeting somebody new. When you're taking the IELTS speaking part 1, add in your personality. So use intonation, use your pronunciation, speak confidently. Basically, don't sound like a robot when you're speaking the IELTS speaking part 1. If you sound like a robot and you're just answering the questions, for example, my name is Adriana. Look, you're probably not even interested in watching this video if I would speak like that throughout this video. And if you're answering questions like that in the IELTS speaking part 1, you won't sound fluent. You're not using pronunciation, intonation correctly, and unfortunately, you will be marked down. Make sure to also regulate your voice. Don't speak too softly. You're speaking to the examiner. They want to hear you. They want to hear what you're saying. They want to give you that mark. But if they can't hear you, they're not going to give you that mark. Don't speak too loud, but don't speak too softly as well. Also, make sure to be answering the questions in full sentences. Now, don't be just giving yes, no answers. For example, if the examiner asks you, do you play sports? And you answer just yes. Okay, that's not really getting you anywhere. You're not showing that you're able to use vocabulary, grammar, that you are able to speak fluently. Answer those questions in full forms and add in some other details. So if the examiner asks you, do you play sports? You could say, yes, I love playing tennis, I love swimming, I like going hiking, and add in details. I go hiking every weekend, usually with my husband and my sisters, and we spend the time out together and we have a picnic. Remember, it is important to be adding detail. Now, don't overdo it with like random pointless details. Stay on topic, answer the question, and you can add in more detail. Finally, don't worry too much if you make so many mistakes. If you make a mistake, just continue speaking, try to correct it in your next sentences, in your next answers, as you will make some mistakes. Even those that score really high on IELTS do make some mistakes. Native English speakers make mistakes at the end of the day. Try to overcome your mistakes, fix them in future answers. If you have prepared, if you have practiced, I'm sure that you will be able to score high using these tips. There you have it, friends. I hope these tips will help you to better prepare and to score high in the IELTS speaking part 1. Remember, if you like this video lesson, make sure to like it, hit subscribe and turn on notifications so that you get the next lesson that I post here on my YouTube channel, and be a good friend. Help your friends learning English by sharing this video lesson with them. Thanks for watching. thanks for being here, and I look forward to seeing you in the comments below this video. Bye for now.